Well, wander on in as you come, find a place to be. I first of all want to give credit to a couple of authors that I used in my preparation for this presentation. The first one is Just Open the Door by Jen Schmidt. And then The Gospel Comes with a House Key is by Rosaria Butterfield. She's amazing. And I want to just read a tad bit about, just have a seat here.
I'll move it over here.
Yep, we'll get it figured out. Come on in, there's always room for one more. You may have to sit back there, but we'll figure it out. Yes, bring your chairs. The definition, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and
They'll be in here shortly, I think, with the papers.
Okay, thank you very much. The definition for hospitality is one who loves the stranger like their own family. And this is, I believe, one of the ways that we know that Jesus is King in our lives, when we perceive the people like that. The difference in entertaining and hospitality, according to Jen Schmidt, is in her book, Just Open the Door, is that entertaining is about the host. Hospitality is about the guest. I really like that. The content shared in this time together is based on the assumption that all of us understand the call for believers to practice hospitality. The goal for the hour is to help us relieve some of our fears and remove excuses that keep us from practicing intentional hospitality. Those are my goals for this hour. A little about myself. Some of you know me too well to be in here. But that's okay. First of all, I love Jesus. Ellis and I have been married, well, tomorrow we'll have our 41st anniversary. Thank you. Together we have raised 4 children. We have 10 grands, and with a set of twin boys on the way. I work as a full-time RN in admissions department at Mennonite Friendship Communities, which is a large retirement facility. Ellis is a retired educator who farms the farm we live on. The farm provides many opportunities to exercise hospitality in a very natural way, and Miss Amanda has that same blessing. My passion as a host is to provide a peaceful reprieve from the daily stressors of our guests' lives. I want to create a space that allows people to feel valued, accepted, and welcome. I am passionate about meeting their needs, whatever those may be. If you come to our house and you're there once and you drink coffee with me, you probably don't have to tell me twice that you use creamer or you drink it black or you want a little sweetener or whatever. Those are things that I pay attention to. It's fair to ask, where did this passion develop? The home I grew up in was one where strangers were treated as family. It was not unusual for us to have additional people living with us. We were already a family of 8. Dad and Mom had a real heart for those that were less privileged than we were. I had a couple of cousins guys that really did not have a very good home situation, and my father took them under his wings and played the dad role with them, and one of them lived with us for quite a while. So he spent money on them. He didn't mind making sure they had clothes that they needed and so on, just to help them get to be better people. We had a really small bedroom. My sister and I, that we shared. It was probably maybe it was just a little bitty room, but when we were teenagers, we ran into a lady by the name of Dort, we called her, who was also, she was from out of state, and she'd moved into a neighboring little town, and I don't even remember how my sister and I happened upon her, but she started telling us that she really did not feel safe where she was living, that there were guys that were bothering her. And so I don't even remember asking Mom and Dad if we could do this. We just told her she needed to come live with us. And we had this tiny little closet and a double bed. And so I went and got a mat out of our camper, and I slept on the mat. Dort slept on the bed with my sister, and every morning I'd shove the mat underneath there, and Dort lived with us for I don't know how long, but quite a while. And then this is the most bizarre thing that happened in that situation at home, is that one summer there was a family that the boys who were youth group age boys started coming to church with us. And so we ran around with the guys. They were part of the youth group, and they had a little girl, a little sister that was a preschooler. And I don't know how this happened, except that I all of a sudden began to realize that this little girl needed somebody to take care of her. Her mom wasn't. I just brought her home, and she stayed with us. Mom took care of her in the daytime and watched her, and at night I took care of her. She slept with me. She shared my bed, whatever that was. And I'm thinking, how in the world did that happen? That could never go today. I mean, I had no legal rights to have her. Her mom didn't seem to care. And then one day she went back home. And I honestly don't remember all that. But understand that that's what I grew up in. And then fast forward the years that Ellis and I started making our home. It wasn't unusual for me to have a Bible study. A group of ladies would get together in the community, and we would have Bible study at our house. And one of our children, I will go unnamed, would frequently say when it was Bible study was over, "Well, can't we just have these people here for lunch today?" Well, what are you going to say? So we always had a whole bunch of little kids, and so it wasn't unusual for a lot of people to stay. And we had lunch together. There was a lot of spontaneous meals and situations that I didn't really know about, and I will name this one. Jeremy was going to Sterling, and that was before the days of cell phones, and Sterling was about 35 minutes away from us. And on a Friday evening when he was coming home for the weekend, he drove in the drive with a car full of people, and came in and he said, "Mom, can you feed these people for supper? Their car broke down, and while you're making supper, Dad and I will go see what's wrong with the car." So the men left, and I was there with this lady I had never met before. And so I cooked supper, and they came back, and they stayed the night with us because they didn't have money to get a motel room. And the next day they got the car fixed and went on their way. Through a series of God-ordained events, I started teaching a group of Catholic ladies the stories of the Bible. And this led to many a day cooking, baking, and doing things in my kitchen. They wanted to learn things like how to make apple butter, how to make cinnamon rolls, and how in the world do you do harvest in the Kansas fields. And a number of them joined us for that occasion. There were times after there was a time after the three boys went to college and left our daughter at home that we had two gals that came and lived with us. They needed a place to live. One of them really needed somebody to love her and just to parent her. And when Ellis and I offered a place to her, we said, you're not just getting a house. This is part of our gift to you, is to parent you. And I got the house cleaned that way. Those girls did that. During the times that the children were in college, we frequently had their college friends over. there was also a time when the Lord really burdened me to be hospitable to new gals that came into the community who weren't used to living in Kansas. And one in particular, they got married in another state, moved to our community, and this lady knew next to nobody. And I went to their reception because we hadn't gone to the wedding, and the Lord just burdened me about that lady. She was a real quiet person, and I thought, how in the world do I connect with her? Because she's so quiet. And then I got to thinking, she moved to Kansas. She moved to our town. She has no idea where to shop for groceries. She doesn't know the town. So I called her and I asked her, would you like for me to just take you to the different grocery stores where I buy certain things? You know how it is. You go to Aldi's for this, and you go to somewhere else for that, and over there for your fresh vegetables. Anyway, and she said yes. And I said, and then we'll go to lunch. Well, that happened probably 14 years ago, and she and another gal that I've mentored over the years, we still get together almost every Thursday morning, and we pray together. So that's been a good thing. But anyway, that was one way that God has opened that door for me. Our house has been and continues to be one of the host houses for our missionaries visiting musical groups and pastors that need a place to land. Sometimes our home is just a place for other people to connect. Last summer I had 2 sets of missionaries that came to the house that we invited, and my job that evening was to provide food and place, and I sat and listened to them, and they just had this wonderful dialogue, and I didn't know much about what they were talking about. So sometimes we do that at our house too. Just a few thoughts that I've gleaned in prep for today before we talk about our fears and excuses. One of the things that may keep people from being hospitable is the fact that real hospitality requires me to become vulnerable. When I'm spending time with people I know and like me, I can feel relatively safe. When I choose to open my home to someone outside of my comfort zone, I may encounter something I don't like. When we open ourselves to someone else, we become vulnerable. What if they reject my hospitality? What if the situation becomes awkward? Knowing this is likely to happen will help alleviate your fears. Just remind yourself that feeling a bit uncomfortable is normal, just like other new things that you have done. After you do it a few times, you will become more comfortable. Let's talk about what we are afraid of. And if I don't cover some things that you think about that you might be afraid of, I hope to have a little time at the end so that we can maybe talk about that together. One of the things that I have feared is, what are we going to talk about? Have you had that? Has that kind of crossed your mind? It has mine. Fortunately, I live and am married to an excellent conversationalist. He's really good about asking questions and drawing people out. And so I can kind of bank on him to help carry that load. But there are lots of starter questions available online. We started a small group where we wanted to just develop some relationships with some people in church that we didn't know very well. And so the first night we were all together, that's exactly what we did. I got online and I got a whole bunch of starter questions and figured out some that were appropriate, and we used those to stimulate conversation, and we don't need those anymore, but we did when we first started. Thoughtful questions give people a clear sense of your love and care. Listening well allows you to really enter into the lives of the people in your space. Now, the next one that I think a lot of ladies struggle with is, what do I serve? That's precisely why I gave you that little piece of those little papers, and they made a few more copies. These are just I don't want to spend a whole lot of time. You can look at these. They may not mean anything to you, and that's fine. But these are recipes that I have liked very much, that are very helpful and easy for me to do. They're pretty basic, so that if you have a lot of special diets or you're a little concerned about that, I think you can easily work around some of those. Credit is due. The easy chocolate cake comes from my sister's stash. Anyway, so what do I serve people? I'm going to tell you a little story that just happened on the 4th of July. Karen and some of her family were there when this all occurred. We had a whole bunch of people around our house, and people were back on the back patio, and there's lots of people around. And a motorcycle pulled in to the yard, and a gentleman hopped off that I hadn't seen for probably 30 years and had grown up in our community, and we'd run around with him, and he knew all the guys and the people that were there. And so we sat and visited. And what did I serve him? I said, do you need anything? Nah, he said he didn't. And after a while I said, are you sure you don't need a glass of water? Yeah, he said he'll take some ice water. Now in Kansas, you put ice in the water because it melts too quick to just give you a glass of cold water. So there's usually lots of ice in Kansas. I come back east and I have to get used to the not ice, but that's okay. The water's cold and that's fine. But anyway, so I went and got him a glass of ice water, brought it out, and he was there for, I don't know, 30 minutes maybe, and left. That's all we provided for him, was a glass of ice water. That evening, I got a message from him on Facebook already, thanking me for for our kindness and just allowing him to be there. So it's not always what. The other thing in relationship to, I gave you some of those recipes. The other thing that I've learned over the years about hospitality is that I need to be prepared. In my house, there is a list in my head of staples that if they are there, I can catch a meal. Now, I can tell you what my list is. It will be different for you. Rarely does our freezer not have pie crust in it that I can't just whip out and make a quiche or make a pie or do something. I'm a real meat and potatoes person, so there's usually potatoes around. And as long as I have potatoes and eggs and vegetables, I can come up with a meal, a bag of noodles or something. So if you start thinking about having some staples there, remember that hospitality is intentional and that it needs to be anticipated. You know, the excuse that, well, I just don't know what to fix means maybe you better start thinking about what you could if somebody walked in the door. So those are some things that I have learned. And it's important to have a few things that help you serve people well. My son and his wife moved into a new house, and they were going to have some company, had their first round of company, and they went to the store, and she bought a tablecloth, and she got some serving spoons, and she got some serving plates, so that she could feel like she could do it well. I brought my daughter said, why don't you just take a few things along so people actually know what you do? Well, this piece here, I got a long time ago at some party thing. It gets used all the time. Because you can put silverware in here, I can grab it and go outside, I can do all kinds of things. And this just is a plain old napkin holder, and it always has napkins in it, so if I need some, I know where they are, and that can go outside in a hurry, and it's not hard to do something else. A lot of the meals that I have served over the years to other people have been in the harvest field. And how many of you have eaten in a harvest field? Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, yeah, you Kansas people do. Yeah. You must come share a space with me in the harvest field. Maybe even in the cemetery where I fed over 30 plus people the other night. So, anyway, if you want a good harvest burger, come join me next summer. I'd be delighted to have you. All right, so those are some ideas about how to serve people. We'll talk a tad bit more about that. What will they think about my house? Those are the things that we fear sometimes. The atmosphere you create is far more important than what condition the house is in, so be prepared. You prepare for others when you plan a quiet time with your own child, or when you have lit candles around the house. When you shovel the sidewalk, or you have nice table settings. All of those things communicate that you care about them. So I brought this along with me so that I could show you how easy and simple it can be. I most always have candles or scentsies in my house. I just do. This is what I do for a napkin. You know, like you like to have cloth napkins, but you don't have time to fold them. This is what I've learned to do. I just roll this thing up, make a knot in it, lay it on a plate. It looks nice to me. And so it's a quick way. Do you know what this is? It's a cooling rack. My sister taught me this, and so I put a placemat in the center of the table, grabbed some wheat stems. I just did this for you guys. Brought this, went downstairs, got a little ribbon and stuff, put this on top. This becomes my meat, or my whatever meat, or a bigger platter or something I have. This is always available. I use it for you use it all the time. It doesn't have to look like this cooling rack, but it makes a lovely centerpiece in a quick order, and it helps people to feel like they're special. They're special. You paid attention to a few of those details. We need to invest in our homes to make them places where we can be hospitable. Just raise a question. I thought about this concerning the tiny house movement and the minimalistic craze. Like, we just don't need much stuff, and we need a really tiny place. What does that do to our ability to be hospitable? Maybe I should just leave it at that. Minimalists would shake their heads at me, because I'll bet there's 60 serving places in my kitchen that I could use for people if I needed them. I'm not saying that that's the be-all, but I think about that. Maybe we need to invest in an outdoor space to make so that you can have a lot of guests. That's been my redeeming factor the last while. I have a lovely outdoor space where I can put lots of people if I need to. I try to have the house picked up before people come. One of the things that I've learned is that if I keep a surface cleaner, I don't care what that is, I didn't dare name anything for fear somebody might think we shouldn't be using that, but you might find a bottle of Windex or surface cleaner and paper towels underneath the sink at my house. And so if you just know that somebody's going to be there in 10 minutes and you just want to do a quick swipe, you just get a little of that stuff out, clean it up, and it makes me feel like, yep, this is okay. It's all right to have these people come here. Another fear we have is, how much is this going to cost me? And the gospel comes with a house key. Butterfields indicates that she has a hospitality budget. I don't know what that means, but you don't have to serve them lobster or baked Alaskan. You can practice hospitality with something as simple as sandwiches or pizza. Remember, don't make hospitality about impressing your friends. Focus on the fellowship and meeting their needs. It may cost you electricity if they live with you. It may cost emotionally, and it cost him. That's all right. Come on in. Emotional and physical energy. Jesus didn't stop with that. And when I think about Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they didn't either. Those 12 disciples had a wonderful place to stay if they needed one. Another thing that I think that I have heard is, what if they are a bad influence on my children? Would you humor me and just let me read you a couple paragraphs from this book about that? We sometimes fear that our neighbors will bring into our homes problems and issues that we are not ready to discuss in front of our children. We pit the command to nurture and teach our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord against the command to love our neighbor. We must stop and think this through. On the one hand, we of course must protect our children from harm. On the other hand, we must not presume that sheltering them will accomplish this. Perhaps our children need to know that when they confront doubts and fears, sexual temptations, and moral and faith crisis, we will not be shocked, offended, or hurt by this reality. Our children need to know that we know how serious the enemy is, how alien and powerful our righteousness in Christ is, and how deep and wide and big and powerful our sin can become if we hide it. But if we have a ministry to the lost, and if our children know that we truly love our unbelieving neighbors, if they have witnessed us coming alongside those who are struggling or burdened or falling under the weight of our sin and tragedy, perhaps, just perhaps, our children will trust us with their deep things. Just think about that. Yes?
What book are you reading?
The Gospel That Comes with a House Key. It is great. Now, can you think of other fears that that I have not addressed before we go to excuses? What are some yes?
Time with our immediate family and children being taken.
Okay, let me get to that just a little bit. Okay, all right. I mean, I'm going to talk about time and some of the excuses. So, are there other things that you fear in relationship to hospitality? Okay, well then let's talk about excuses that we use. The first one I think about is that hospitality isn't my gift. Have you heard that one? What do you suppose I'm going to say about that? We may not all be gifted in hospitality, but we are all commanded to be hospitable. Isn't that the truth? We are. Not having a spiritual gift is no excuse for not practicing the gifts of the Spirit. Would you agree? Hospitality is not about how we feel, but denying ourselves and serving others. That's what it is. All right, now here's the time thing. And this is, we'll talk, there's kind of two sets to this, but I think they're kind of the same thing. Some of us have full-time jobs and our schedule's full and we have no energy for hospitality. And I think that would go along with what you have with your children. If this is your excuse, maybe we should start keeping a log of where we spend our time, how we spend our time. Hospitality is a lifestyle to embrace. And here are a few hints that I think might help make it a little bit more doable. So if you know the people that you're having, allow them to help bring the food. You know, if somebody says, hey, can I bring something tonight? Sure. Remember, this is not entertaining. This is not about the host. This is about hospitality. So, sure. What would you like to bring? I try, when people do that to me, I try really hard to just graciously say what works for you. You know what I mean? Or I'll say, this is the main dish. What would you like? What works with you to come alongside that? Maybe you invite somebody over for dessert instead of dinner. You know, you just have a dessert with somebody instead of the whole meal. You can fix a dessert, or you can say, hey, we're going to have desserts tonight. You want to bring your favorite one? Or, you know, store-bought's not bad. It's okay to occasionally do that, because we're talking about the fellowship and meeting needs of people, not about entertaining. And that's sometimes really hard for me, because I love beautiful food. I like to do things just right. So don't think that doesn't go down in my brain too. Or ask another family to bring their Sunday meal to your house, and you just pool your resources and eat together. You could do something like that. Showing hospitality may not come naturally, but it takes practice. One of the things that I think would answer your question is to try to involve your children in helping to make hospitality a part of your life. Get them to help you select the guests. Maybe you can get the gentleman in the house to do the grilling, and you just do a few sides. You go outside, so you don't have to worry about what your house looks like. You're all outside for the evening. I did a year of where I met with a number of girls on a monthly basis, and we talked about hospitality. And one of the things that we were talking about is that sometimes our children may worry about other children destroying their things, or you know how that goes. They have their own. So help your children put those away, and help them come up with ideas of things that they can do with other children, so that they don't necessarily get everything destroyed, or something may happen, but allow them to participate in preparation for the company or the people that you're having. Get them to pray with you about these people, for these people. You were talking about taking time away from your family.
And I'm thinking too, like, you know, sometimes the children are tired, or like they need, or oftentimes, you know, hospitality comes in the evenings a lot.
Doesn't have to.
It seems to, you know, like for dinner and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when everybody's tired and needing emotional time, or they need daddy time, and like, yeah, that's where the stretch is for me.
But that's a box where we think that that's where the hospitality time is. There's another one that I think goes along with that, and I think it's true. I'm not here with a recipe exactly how it's to be done. I'm not. I am telling you that here are some ideas about how it can be done, and how, because it is a call for us. It is part of our way to use our homes as an extension of the kingdom. And if I look at our home as an extension of God's kingdom and draw people in, then that helps me redirect. Okay, so I can't do it at night, but I can in the morning, or whatever. I can meet with somebody. Another excuse is I'm an introvert and people make me tired. I'll be honest, I can't relate to that one. I can be ever so tired getting ready for somebody, but I know in the back of my head, once these people come, I will be energized and it'll be just fine. But I recognize not everybody's like that. We are all created differently. That does not, neither one of us has the edge over being good hostess, because let me tell you something. Introverts are excellent question people. They're excellent at caring for people. They're excellent at being sensitive to people's needs. Rosera is an introvert. And one of the things that she talks about in this book is that she knows that for her to carry out the hospitality that she wants to, she needs to have time with herself and prep time. She gets up early in the morning and she puts on a pot of beans. She always has beans and rice cooking for somebody. She assumes that somebody's going to show up. She said, I get up early and I spend time puttering and putting all those things in place. And for her, that is how she keeps herself rejuvenated, because she is intentional about carrying out the gift of hospitality. And if you've read any of her books, you understand where she's coming from. And so she very much believes that, she would tell you that that's no excuse. This is how you figure out how you can do that. So that's my little bit of advice to introverts. And if you want to throw that out the window, please read her book before you totally disagree with me. Another thing, what if these people disappoint me? What time is it? Okay, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories of some people in our lives that we worked very hard with, and they did disappoint us. I was teaching certified nurse aid classes, and one class I had, there was 4 gentlemen in it, and they were not just young guys that they wanted to become CNAs, and so I befriended some of them. The one guy was he was a recovering drug addict, was trying to find his way, finally got himself where he was a great caregiver. He did a really good job as an aide. So he was in my class, and anyway, after he got finished with the class, we hired him. The company I work for now hired him, and we had a rental property. He had been living with his mom, and he was trying to get out on his own, so now finally he had a job and he had money, and so we rented it at one of our rentals to him, and we kept in touch with him. He would come out to our house. Ellis very much got involved with his life. He's some younger than me, but not very much, and so it needed to be a joint effort for the two of us to be working together with him. Well, he just could not keep himself on the straight and narrow. One evening he called, and I could tell, he called me, I could tell he was in a drunk as all get out. I didn't know for sure what was going on with him, and I asked him where he was, and he told me he was at one of the local bars. And so Ellis and I hopped in the car and went out to find him. We couldn't even find him, but then we found him out by the street, drunker than all get out. Took him home. He didn't pay his rent, but through the course of time he came to church with us, and one Easter he decided he wanted to become a believer. And he accepted Christ, got baptized in our church, So we decided at that point maybe he should just live with us for a while, just to try to keep keep a little tighter handle on his going off and doing drugs and things. And so we made a space for him in our basement, and he lived there for a while. And one day I came home, he disappeared. Just packed up his stuff and left, which was kind of normal in the way if things got bad within himself, he just would run off. And so eventually he moved to to Las Vegas area. I haven't seen him for a long time. I don't know what's going on with him. It was not that great it didn't turn out well. You know what I mean? At least it didn't look that way to us. I think Ellis and I both felt like the investment that we made, it was what God was asking us to do. It really, the outcome isn't mine. My obedience is to give him a place to be. I was a little concerned. I mean, he was a druggie. I put him downstairs. I mean, we didn't have kids around, but he didn't take anything from us, but he sure could have. You know what I mean? There's just all those kind of crazy things that you're not sure. And I'm not advocating that we do things that are unsafe. I am not. We both felt okay with doing what we did, and we just lost a bunch of money. That was all. It wasn't like he stole from us or anything like that. I also had another lady in the class. She was an adult lady, and she had a really interesting story, and I just connected with her in class. And one day she asked to come to our house. So I brought her home, and she told me that she wanted to become a believer. Guys, it was merely just being who I was, embracing her in that 3-week time that we were together in the class, in the CNA class. And she too has vanished out of my life. I don't really know where she's at or what all is going on with her. But I feel like it was another place that it was okay. It was not my job for the outcome. Did what God asked us to do, and I hope someday to see her. And the outcome isn't ours. That's not our responsibility. It's to be faithful. I have a couple of things that I thought might just be practical tips for easier hospitality for having overnight company. I don't know how many of you have space for that kind of thing. And these are just things that I do at my house, so you don't have to. They're just ideas. I always have the unused beds made up. And a number of years ago, I went and bought a set of towels that I put in every room. So there's always clean towels in there. So when the bedding gets washed after somebody's there, then I automatically wash the towels and fold up the towels, and they go back in that room so that I know that anytime they come, all that's ready. I don't have to worry about that. If I know that you're coming, although I didn't do this for Karen the last time. So Karen will tell you if these things are true or not. I really like to have some fresh flowers in the room. And I'll get just outside flowers. I mean, sometimes I'll buy some, but normally I don't. That was one reason why I wanted to put something in here for you guys. And I knew you could get water here. I knew you could get coffee here. And I was trying to figure out something that might give you a little bit of a clue about who I am and that you're welcome here. And so I found a bunch of wheat that I had at home, and so that's why you have those. Then I always make sure that there's plenty of blankets available in the room so somebody doesn't have to go chasing those down or wishing they had them in the middle of the night. Just a few things about how to make singles feel comfortable in your home. make sure that you include them in your discussions. And if you're having singles and a combination of married and single people, have the seating arrangement determined before they come. Think about that when you invite them, so that that isn't uncomfortable for anybody. You know, I often just say, well, you can sit wherever you want to. I don't like to do that with singles, because I think it's nice to have them interspersed with people, and they're not going to feel very comfortable doing that if you don't do that for them. Okay? Plan activities that allow odd numbers of persons to participate, because often there is an odd number, and that's perfectly fine. Just don't make it obvious. Think about that when you invite them. And then provide chance for female and male interaction by inviting mixed company, because they do enjoy having that. And so those are things that I've tried to do over the years with them. What are some of we have just a few minutes, questions, or before I give you my little concluding thing, questions or comments that you would like to make? We have a few minutes. Yes?
Activities that you're doing? Like, what kind of activities are you talking about?
Oh, well, at our house
Eating food.
right. At our house we may play games. You know, like table games, and things you can play, dice games, or there's a number of those sorts of things. If you think about it, that doesn't really matter if you have even numbers or not. That's what I'm talking about. Or outside games, you can play outside games that you don't have to have even numbers. It's about thoughtfulness in prep for that. And if you don't really feel comfortable doing it in your house, grab somebody and take them for coffee at Metropolitan or wherever, and sit and visit with them. And if you don't have space for many people, just invite one or two. That's okay. You don't have to have a whole house full to be hospitable at all. Yes?
I was a missionary and with two small kids, so something that we found, to your question, my husband was a pilot, and so sometimes people would show up unexpected, and hospitality was not my gifting. But one of the things I learned was it was okay to take a couple hours in the afternoon with my kids and fill up their love tanks and not feel guilty, because I felt so guilty, like I'm not doing the right thing. But I learned it was okay, and then we made a practice that my husband would take them to bed and pray with them every night, no matter who was there and what time. And so that was his moment to fill up their love tank and have that conversations with them. And sometimes it was quick, and sometimes it was 15-20 minutes. And so that was one way we found as our family, because my kids were 2 and 3 when we got there. So little kids, and most of the people who came were adults. And
so they could understand some of that if you went away for a little bit. I like that very much. Yes.
This isn't very spiritual.
It doesn't have to be.
Like, I love roast chicken, but when I serve it to my family, it's just kind of like you rip the bird apart. I love you said carve it. Can you tell us how you carve a chicken, a whole chicken, in front of people?
I'd love to have you in my kitchen. Do you know how much I just love to have people like you in my kitchen and me showing you how to do things like that? Well, if you really want to know how to carve a chicken, let me see if I can. I put it out. I have a big platter about this big. It was on somebody's wall as a wall hanging. And when I bought it at an estate sale, well, it now is my big roast or chicken serving dish. So I put the chicken in the middle, and then you put those potatoes and everything all the way around. It's it looks beautiful. So you cut off the wings, cut off the thighs, right where the thighs are, cut the drumstick and the thigh apart. Now recognize that you're cutting a cooked bird. It's not that hard. And then you slice. It's not going to run away, right? And then you slice the breast from outside in, and it just kind of all falls apart, and then people just take a fork, you just have a fork in there, and they just kind of grab stuff off there.
So you leave it generally on the plate like that?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, because it really does make good presentation. And that's kind of a big thing with me, and so I like to have things that look nice.
That's great.
But like your roasted potatoes, if you put that all on a big plate, looks good, and it didn't, make an ordinary roast look pretty good that way. So, a little color, that's right, that's right.
One thing I learned, I was single for many years, and so when you bring up the single aspect of it, when I would join in a group, I often would feel left out or the third wheel. So one thing that I appreciated though is when people saw me as a person, and the first question that they asked usually was, "Oh, are you seeing anybody?" Wrong question.
Right.
Wrong question. A question like, "Oh, where are you working? What is God doing in your life right now?" Look at them as an individual person, not as what.
Missing half of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they're not totally there. I was
Yes.
all there. I just didn't have a husband yet, and that wasn't.
Well,
So I'm just.
I think
focused
that's
on
great.
them as a person, not as.
I've had such good friends in singles in my world, and so that matters a lot to me. So,
Seamless people.
yes, you
They
do.
are.
Yes. Okay, anybody else?
Question.
Yes.
I'm an introvert. How do you greet your guests? Like, I feel like sometimes if I just go to the door and open it and say, "Oh, how are you? Are you great today?" or blah blah blah. Like, I'm putting too much pressure on them because I want them to come in and feel at home. And if they went into their home, they wouldn't greet themselves like that. Like, how do I make them feel welcome?
I'm not introvert, so I won't answer that just directly. What would some of you other introverts say? How do you like to be greeted if I was having you come in, how would you like that?
I would come in and say hi, and then I would go sit down, I think.
What is your first name?
Abby.
Abby. I said, well, Abby, come on in. Have a seat. I think I kind of pick up on some of that stuff with people pretty quickly. Yeah, I would know better than fussing over you too much.
So it's more about knowing your people.
It is kind of just being in tune to them. And I learned some of that in my nurses training. Like you walk into a hospital room or something, you were taught to pay attention to where your patient was at with, are they happy this morning, sad this morning, upbeat, or, you kind of gently move into that space. And I'm guessing that's what you would like. Yeah, well, I don't blame you. Yes?
I'm kind of somewhere between an introvert and an extrovert. I'm thinking maybe sometimes you could give a choice. Either help yourself to share in the living room, or if you'd like to, have a good other that give choices sometimes.
Or if you want to come sitting in the kitchen with me while I finish up dinner or something. Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea as well.
I like to say, welcome, it's good to see you, come on in, as a starter, and then generally it just kind of goes from there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more along the introvert as well. I've been working to be more outgoing, but that's one thing I try to focus, to make them feel welcome, and that they're, I want them to come in.
And I think it is all about focusing on the guest. We are not playing Martha Stewart. We are not. We are about focusing on what they need, and a good listening ear, acceptance, welcome, and making sure that they have a good place to eat. Do they need food? Like Joe just needed a glass of ice water and some good conversation. That's all he needed that day. And so that was fine. That was pretty easy for me. So hospitality can happen in a messy house. It can happen around a dinner table where the main dish is canned soup. That's okay. Don't hesitate to offer hospitality because you are afraid you won't measure up. Remember, the principle is biblical. The motivation is love. The focus is on your guest, and it all takes practice. Thank you so much for coming. It's been delightful to have you. I hope you go home and invite one person this week to your house.